so Sivakula Changabati. Do you want that? It's easy. Somebody you want to see.
And the history of this drawing is that an outlying king made a present to the king of Magadha of a jewel, and the king of Magadha felt he didn't have something of equivalent worth to give back to that other king, so he asked Buddha what he should give, and Buddha indicated that he should give this kind of drawing of the 12 branches of dependent arising with these 5 parts symbolizing suffering.
And Tagoga the Gavati Remuti Castle Remuti that Jara Chelia in Teltu Tani. And the Negutani and Korang Togani.
And there's a story that the outlying king, when he received the picture and studied it, attained realization from it.
That's enough. Yala Juni that got in Tatarisha. Yala Juni, Yala Kalawa, Rumuslava. Yala Juni, Tangudi, Mariba said she got that the Jogo Surwa.
Now, with respect to the 12...
Gabu, the Mari Gamu Loma days, any Gamu Loma, could you kid it?
Now, with respect to the 12 branches, these are symbolized by the 12 pictures around the outside. The first of them at the top being an old person, blind, and using a stick. That indicates ignorance. Using a cane.
This one. That's Jenny. The Maribu Telea, the Nelulia mounting in Maribu chick. That Yala Juning, Tommy Maribu, Nelu mounting in Maribu shame.
Now, with respect to the ignorance, that is the first branch of the 12 members of dependent arising, it is an ignorance that is an obscuration with respect to the actual mode of being of phenomena.
That Nambalia to the Shiche Yarba, that to the Shinansi, Yanchik subdivision Manguchungiar, the Negatoni interpretation Shina, Damar Manguyungare.
Now, first of all, within the Buddhist philosophical schools, there are the 4 main schools of tenets, and then within those schools, there are many different divisions, thus there come to be many interpretations of what ignorance is. I not only don't have time to explain all of these, but I don't remember all of them either.
That? That? That's done, the Pena Mongba Satelia, Maribu Satelia, Nilu Machine, Rabbi Nilu Machine, Mongzamji, Yungudua, Yongchodua. Dan the Maribu Sati, Mongzam, Tazamaimba, Chicanda, Casul, Tanda, Chijlo, Zindeng, Loxish.
In general, with respect to ignorance, obscuration, there is indeed a factor which is a mere non-knowing of how things actually exist, a factor of mere obscuration. However, here in the 12 members of dependent arising, it is explained as a wrong consciousness that conceives the opposite of how things actually do exist. In Sutra, 19 different types of ignorance are described. These are the various types of wrong views related with related with the beginning or related with an end and so forth. Extremes.
다 가다 되게 가다 가서 빵적 유무들이야 유무 현지세야지도 유무 군다사지 이거야.
In any case, with respect to the afflictive emotions that we are seeking to get rid of, there are two types, innate and artificial.
다 dunde 다셔버디 이제 가서 군다사야디 가다 시 dunde 왕게 달러 연시 바사도 가서래 봐. 다 남도 쇠셔서 차윤도 대인이 심지어 탐색이 줄을 심지어 탐색이 줄을 여대버지다 가다 연이 배 동행 영역에 다 동행 영역에 배 심지어 저 풍저 자화의 차야 말 풍야가 자화 풍식 자화의 차 매봐. 풍식 자화의 행직 용어도 차려야 돼.
The artificial afflictions are ones that have systems of tenets, philosophical ideas, teachings behind them, where the mind newly imputes or makes them up through conceptuality. Thus, these are not ones that all sentient beings have, and these cannot be the ones that are at the root of the ruination of sentient beings.
다 될래야 다 자와 디슈니 야문도 안다 고불루루기 동니 dun주베 나리야 소원의 신체 되던 견리 견은 양다반의 똑바가 되는 덤베 머리서
As
될래야라 주니
Nagarjuna says in his 70 stanzas on emptiness,
되던 견리 견은 양다반의 똑바가
that consciousness which conceives those things that are produced in dependence upon causes and conditions to ultimately exist, to truly exist, was said by the teacher of Buddha to be ignorance. From it, the 12 branches of dependent arising arise.
다 된대기 간다지 가소래 간다 되는데 아니 genshana madeba rawang ko ne duban zin dengegi lo tela nangse 다 yang pege mixe yugi chaba da mixe chaba gi da ni ganda ji ga sa ju kansa la mi be ani tenzin cheni ada kansa ge tenzin se ada chögi tenzin se ji de ni she ga.
Thus, this is a consciousness that misapprehends or misconceives phenomena to exist under their own power, not to be dependent, and from the point of view of different types of objects of this consciousness, there come to be a conception of the inherent existence of phenomena and a conception of the inherent existence of persons, called a conception of a self of phenomena and conception of a self of persons.
다 가사가 등진 달아야래 다 미션달이야 다 가사 신달의 미니 담반진이 된진 직당 다야 소소 정규기 다 소소 정리기 다 나리야 미니 나오냐 버께서 될 미니 아니 된두도 진댕이 된진 직 용기야래 치면들 제만달이야 아니 직더스기야.
With respect to the conception of the inherent existence of persons, or the conception of a self of persons, there are two types. One is to take cognizance of some other person and to consider that person to be inherently existent. And the second one is to take cognizance of one's own person, one's own I, and consider oneself to be inherently existent. The latter is called the false view of the transitory collection.
다도 고불로 간다 소야디 간다 된대기다 직다 다 코야 자와 직들 생기 대양 가서 강한 민이 강한 때에 나오냐 버께서 풍부 담반집에 된진기 왕기 아니 유구야레스 된진디 시샤 유구야레스 된제인도 쉐기 된진 되게 강사가 된 직들 생기 시샤 유구야레스 됐송샤
What Nagarjuna
된이가 너 된진 비치고레스 머리부 비치고레스
What Nagarjuna was indicating was that the conception of one's own self as inherently existent arises, this being the false view of the transitory collection, arises in dependence upon the conception of those bases which are the basis of designation of one's own person, the conception of those phenomena, mind, body, and so forth, as inherently existent. Thus, both of them are conceptions of inherent existence, but the conception of phenomena of mind, body, and so forth as inherently existent acts as a cause of the conception of the person that is designated in dependence upon that mind and body as inherently existent.
shi kansa la mini yang nambai ji kansa rangje tube da zaiyu dun zimbe yang zimbe lhangi ji yong ya re.
Then, with regard to a conception of a self of persons, there's another type, which is the conception that the person is self-sufficient, or the person is substantially existent in the sense of being self-sufficient.
Da nga ran do sen samsh ta me na cha dang lo jie yuan lo jie yun de ka so de jian de ngao nya be lo be shu chen bu xian de da ti jian xian ni ani rang zhao le cha guo rang de xian xian chu ri qia rang zhao le cha guo xian zhao le dang wan de le yong duo cha dang lo xi mo ko le ya ngao nya ba nga sa ji lo ji ji duo.
So now, if we reflect on it, if we consider our own desire and hatred, we'll see that they're generated with a conception of oneself as very solid as its basis. And due to the conception of oneself as so solid, one comes to have a sense of one's own faction and others' faction, in dependence upon which desire and hatred occur. This is the way it happens, isn't it?
Di negoli ya mashi ngas chen ngaran zo tanyen sha sa ji nga ji de dan dan ya re la swang ne de bu nyong gen ge nga ji ye ta ju ji di yin na yang di negoli ya da ngaran zo lo pe nga sa shuk chen bu ji lo ge yun du zan ne ge da ga da ji nyok de swang ge le cai da nga sa ga feeling ru ko nyok de so ya ga cai ru ko du le yun du any lo tigin zin su de ya du ta sha sta be na ka so ri ge ren xin ge nga yi na da jar ba ne su jar ba ne su tele ge wa ji gi kan da ka so ri zin da shi le de ya.
Now, there is indeed a conventionally posited I, a self, a person that is the doer of actions, that is the accumulator of karma, that is the person undergoing suffering, and so forth. However, when you consider the I, when it gets to the level of a troublemaker, when it gets to the level of making trouble, then that strong, solid type of I.
가자. 내가 나 수투바 가다가 뭐를 내출이 겨지 그다. 뭐를 내출이 겨지기 아니 간다지 진수지 레디야다.
There is a sense of a self.
뭐를 내출이 겨 정신지도 현대행이 다 놓차고요.
There is a sense of a self-instituting I, and this I is an exaggeration beyond what actually exists. Thus, there is a consciousness that conceives of this sort of self-instituting I.
대내걸이야 가서 로리야 샷나로디 나슬로는 베트 코라 수세지 다 풍불로 때네 딱상으로 들으시 로리야 미샤와 간다 코라 베 separate entity 여대버지 들으시 로리 실금되게.
And isn't it so that when this I appears to the mind, it doesn't appear as if it is designated in dependence upon the aggregates of mind and body? Isn't it that it appears to have its own separate entity? Almost as if it has its own separate entity.
다 딘데지기 로리야 나와는 신신의 주요나 우메지관의 샤바는 신기 딱자 담바이나 거의 가소래 지들 나오는 신신의 그 간다 인디펜던트 하는 여대버지나 우메슝의 샤바는 시 딱자 땅나 체세체선 로고야 다 주니로와 사다디 딱자 땅인도 미세도 전에 누구서야 매대버지 그 사바샤도와 딘데 인도잖아 간다 니주 여버지 거라 가소래 인디펜던트 하는 여대버지나 아니 그 싸는 니주 여버지래디 그 싸는 미니버디기 간다 가소래 거다 겐 착배 때문에 딱상마다 매대버지 차대기 알바 차대기 열어든 가서 롤 나용도 좀좀서지 디 세서지 롤이야 나 나오는 신기 르 셴벤네걸 애니 녀다가 레고요.
If it did exist the way it appears, then when one investigated it with the middle way reasoning, the Madhyamaka reasoning, then it should get clearer and clearer and clearer. However, the fact is that when you search for this I using the middle way or Madhyamaka reasoning, it cannot be found. When one searches for it, it can't be found. However, it appears to our minds as if it is something that is concretely point-outable, something very concrete. Thus, this conflict between the fact that it appears as if it is very concrete, but when it is analyzed it can't be found, indicates that there's a conflict between how it appears and how it actually subsists.
What appears, what is.
And this is similar to how physicists, for instance, describe a difference or make a distinction between what appears and what actually exists.
Any Penangana served to happen a Chalachi Songanalia, Manu Kunla, Manu Kunlia, Chala Telemini, Chapatiluchi, Nyatani, Ni Yambe Nigola, Yan Chapatiluchi, and Tele Niga Chapayim, Sumbachilla, Yan Charachidua, Shushiluchidua.
Even within desire, in our own experience, we can identify different types of or levels of desire. For instance, if you go into a store and just see some article and you have desire for it, there's that type of desire. But then if you buy it, then after you buy it and you feel it's mine, this is my whatever, this is my article, then there's a different type of desire.
So today in the Tangu de church 가서 church 낭장 church 낭장 서로다 디트리스 도 세야지 다들이야 대자 마기ben 네거기 네거 찍체 디 네거로 church 연 진수로 찍도가 로로 셔주로 찍도가 다 되네 디 야고도 삼바지기 아니 차바지에 그도를 유텔미니 차바지에 그도기 야 church들이야 church가 가서 아주 런진수로 찍도가 다 되네 소소냐 타전에 소소베 대규 송사를 지라 다 딜레이가 수처럼 다치 친데베 책수 찍도가
Thus, we can discriminate between distinguish between three different levels of appearance and apprehension here. In the first level, the object is merely appearing. This is before you've generated desire. There's the mere appearance of the object, mere recognition of the object. Then in the second level, when you're feeling, oh, this is really good, then there's that level of apprehension of the object. And then on the third level, after you've bought it and you've made it your own, then there's a third level.
So, Tagia, Parbaticula, Ranibaticula, you tell me, you take that dish on that. But Tangut, you did tell you, you did none do ni. Nangzamne, the Rudu Nangiara, Antolia, the Rudu Nangiari. In a Tinigolia, the temperature raised Sambe, Zimbabwe, and the Bush was over that. Can I need Zimbabwe Shambuji, maybe could do the Nangzam, that is do some matter can have. 다 되네 이 야고도 삼베 착바게 인도잖아요 될래야 담바리 시험베 덴진 데이터니 착바게 인도와 덴진 내가 참무지 시험에 있는 덴진도 중대를 요아래 내가 락바지 시험에 있는 내가 락바가 로인도잖아요 덴진 다 중대 요구 말에 덴진 그 장이 용대 요아래.
Now, on the first level, when the object merely appears, the object does appear to exist from its own side, to exist inherently. However, the mind is not strongly involved with apprehending the object as existing from its own side or as existing inherently. But on the second level, this ignorance, which conceives of the object, which apprehends the object as existing from its own side, this being the level in which one generates the desire toward the object, one does, at this level, one does have the conception of inherent existence of the object and adherence to it as existing from its own side. On that level, there's a subtle level of desire that can exist at the same time as this consciousness conceiving the object to inherently exist. But when that desire becomes stronger, then the conception of inherent existence merely acts as its cause, and at that time is not in association or existing at the same time as that desire.
다 디가나 소소 녀서도 가서 나오냐바 다 가서 나오냐바 로슈신 붙게 된게 나디게 다그 수인도 유티 이도 온와라 가서 이도 온와 다 담배 이도 온와 나왔다도 샴바지게 타라 롱 저거 다 런신지 여번 진딩은 다 코에다 좋아지는 님돌이야다 가서 루루 전에 윤도 아니 시부지 다 잡고 레고도 샴바치 말베 되게 당고 때 유코랄 예민 아디 야고도 삼바지 자연 거 알아 차인 거 알아 드디 가사 유코란 게 때네 담배 이도 온와지 진도 봐 담배 이도 온와지 진이 디 담배 되자지 봐 다 디네 소소 녀처리잖아 근데 이도 오면 뭐부터 대기 줄을 봐라 봐 대기 주변 내가 몰라 나스는 짜치 붙지서지 라는 차등에 짜치 붙지서다 대다 되는 윤도 또 추도 맞네 니 되서 아니 차고디 대기를 쇼셔 친구와 이거 뭔가 좀 내가 말아서 이 냠용선의 친구와.
Now, in terms of our own experience, it's important to identify that on the first level, there is the appearance of the object as inherently existent. On the second level, there is this consciousness that agrees with that appearance, that conceives or apprehends the object as inherently existent, this giving rise to desire. Then on the third level, when you've made the object into your own, it becomes involved with this, with the conception of ownership, and it's as if two very powerful streams now of desire have come together. Is that it?
Desire solar 간다. 그게 유이동 유이 가서다. 유 담배 이동 현등에기 좀직체.
So one is the adherence to the object as being inherently pleasant. That's on the second level.
다티네 디토라 다도 셴베 좀직게 알아. 다 딘자로게 수 흐르부르 chen 이 차고직게 윤도 차고시고 심부시고 안 되고.
And then on the third level, one is conceiving it, one has a strong conception of it as being one's own. When these two come together, one's desire is extremely strong.
근데 누가 뭐가 누구 상황을 하나?
Is this the way it is? If you think about it, is this the way it is?
다 디윤도 다 다다가는 시다한에 집어지. 시다 컨트롤.
It's the same for hatred also.
배는 소소도 만들지 배는 그게 독자를 통배는 안데 독자도 삼바지기 예 따지다 배는야 독자도 삼바지 배는 냠발 지야지 독자래 아카다디 야고 민도 삼바지기 문진샤 직도와 다티네 다티 진짜 독자데 삼바지기야 콩주게 용배 콩주 장해야지 당 콩주게 용야 내가 직도와 다티네 디랑다 제윤도 델레자 주시다 다 독자디 나라 너는 독자지 레샤 삼는 윤도다 With
regard to hatred, for instance, there'd be a first level which would be conventionally true, for instance, of just seeing some object and identifying that such and such is bad. But then when it gets to the level of thinking, oh, this is really bad, to the level at which there's a level at which it produces hatred. Then, there's that level. That's the second level. Then on the third level, if it's related with oneself, like perhaps bringing harm to oneself, then they can develop extremely strong hatred. There are these two levels of hatred.
Yeah. That did it chata ni jang lo ya. That tenzing ro chen lo.
So thus, for both desire and hatred, the ignorance, which is the conception of inherent existence, acts as an assister.
So that nyao de sang song pa ko de chen lo.
So that which makes all the trouble then is this pig.
And ne lo da de pa ko cha de.
And the year that symbolizes my birth in the Tibetan calendar is the pig year.
Yeah, that jig be I think that timu tenzing gi ta zawa chi dan de da. Ta zawa chi dan de de song.
So this is the way that obscuration, ignorance, serves as the root of the other afflictive emotions.
Ta ko ra che gi yin zu lo mong de ya ba.
So this ignorant consciousness is one that is obscured with respect to the mode of being of phenomena.
De-symbolize mi long de che.
Thus, to symbolize that, the person is blind, the picture that symbolizes it.
That the regret you say yomar ba. Sama yomar ba, captain sama yomar ba.
Ignorance has no valid cognition as its foundation.
Weak ro da.
It's weak.
Tende indu zane go and kawaki de chi.
Therefore, it's an old person going by way of a king.
Yeah. That tende ki maribati kaza maribati thome mariba sa che. That tende ya mariba rikchigla da thuji kunul ya lander na mong mariba chigle.
This is called the initial ignorance, initial among the 12 branches. Then there's another type of ignorance, which is obscuration with respect to actions or karma and their effects.
Tak yu kunu adam kada tenzing mariwa. Thi any time ni la saya tele ya kada chi siwa kho thanji la yongso lo de time.
Now this causal or fundamental mode of ignorance.
Ni ga lo da, ni ja lo di da tenzing mariwa the kin the wang da yong de ni ja lo chi ba.
The causal ignorance, which is the fundamental motivator of this process, serves as a basis for both of these levels in the second area from the center, both virtuous actions and non-virtuous actions.
That tuju kunu the landa na mo mari bo ti ina sna mo be la sa.
But then the temporary or not so basic ignorance is the obscuration with respect to the effects of actions, and it serves as a motivator only for non-virtuous actions.
Ta ko to. Tende mari bo ti ta mari bo ti kengi la sa ya di to ni ba duji za gen shin sa de.
Through the condition of this ignorance, action arises, compositional action, and this is symbolized by a potter. On the tanka, ignorance begins at the bottom, but on our the one that's in your hand, it's at the top.
That zaken kada duchi is the ducheba. Kanda chi tidugi debu tunyong ne. Deba tidu chayong deba.
So now this second member is called compositional action because actions serve to compose or bring together, bring about pleasure and pain.
더 자견이야 배자 배지도 삼주잖아. 삼주잖아. 자견이 다 간다. 즉 뇌제 자이 뇌제 소용 거 알아. 아니 간다 짐버지래. 준 짐버지래. 엔 자견이 집에 터네. 아니 지 거자 싸바지. 간다 입 줄땡이지. 그래서 싸바시. 이 쇠베 내걸이야. 근데 자초면 봐. 그나 레 레 싸데 레 싸베 인 뒤께지 니번에 레드 가르고 요래 텐조는 레시 베모르고 요래 간다지 가이네면에다 간다 레 문조어디 가베젤이야 디 파자 소리를 마치니 이나야 제부 제마기야 누버 토미도 요래 젠셴마 차나 근데 인도 레디 렌식 베 쪼아도 마선에 제베 제라 되네 쪼 내가 쪼아 사바 메나야 그래 레디 누버 토미도 되디가 봐 베드네 신신 된다 뒤인데 다 뺄이야 사실 자겐되기 또 안다 자수야 마음에 다 야. 봐. 등산 미신 소리도 여마다가 그 겁도 싶은데 가서 배 자수로다 가다이니 자이 콜로도 자겐기 렌식 좋아하잖아. 얘는 그런 뱀이 코리고 알아. 또 들에 배 제금으로 상.
Now, a maker of clay pots is someone who takes clay and forms it into some new object. And I think that the way the example is being drawn is that just as the potter, once the potter spins the wheel, nowadays you have machines, we have machines to do this with, so this is the old example, spins the wheel once, the wheel will keep turning through that. Well, as long as it's needed. Just so. The wheel keeps turning without further exertion, without further striving and exertion. So, when an action has been done by a sentient being, that action establishes a predisposition or potency in the mind, or as it's said in the Prasangika system, it produces a state of destructiveness. In either case, both have the potential to go on without obstruction to produce eventually its effect. In the meantime, no further condition need be encountered for that potency to remain.
단 두지기 래리야 데뷔 차네 아니 래 겨와다 래 미겨웠어 되게 봐 시도 쳐요는 소남글래 가자 소남 모임벨래 소남글래 미외래 진짜 숨쉬도 다 레티 데뷔야 데발기야지나 되게 차네 아니 가자 데베도 냥루기야지나 아니 소남 모임벨래 또 두세요.
And with respect to the various types of actions, if one considers their effects, such as rebirth in the desire realm, formless realm, there are virtuous actions and non-virtuous actions. Within the virtuous actions, there are meritorious actions and non-fluctuating actions. And then in terms of the door or the approach through which the action is done, there are actions of body, actions of speech, and actions of mind. In terms of the actual entity of actions or themselves, there are actions of intention and intended actions. In terms of whether the effect of that action is definite to be experienced or not, there are definite actions and indefinite actions. And then in terms of the first type, definite action, those actions, the effect of which is definite to be experienced, there are those actions, the effect of which is definite to be experienced in this lifetime. those definite to be experienced in the next lifetime, and those definite to be experienced in some other lifetime.
다 샤야래 가서리 그게 데뷔 빼나 빼나 지 미르 된다고 류 마상 밀루 팽행이 내지다 밀루 대 내가라 개발 즉 속상화도 즉 속미둑바다 된데기 간다지 뒷내국이 개발 상의 편지가 류딘티기 다시 연대서로 지 연대남 즉 차셰 지 용수 쪽버치게 그다 디찬에시니 편지를 쪽지를 해서 니용도
Then also with respect to actions, there are those actions, for instance, that would lead to a lifetime as a human that impel or project the general lifetime in a human body. And then there are other types of actions that like fill in the picture that are called completing actions that would cause the body state to be beautiful, ugly, and so forth.
빼나 편지 계획방 적시 미기회 좋았으니 다 빼나 믿어보지 싫어하다 깔래 침부에 되고 내 나서 10시 동대 봐 늘지 차셔나 적시 가서 미기회 좋 편지 계획방.
For instance, take the example of a human who undergoes a great many illnesses and so forth. And this means that the projecting or impelling action, karma, was a virtuous action because the person was born as a human. But then the completing actions, those that fill in the pictures and make all of the diseases, are non-virtuous actions.
당연 될래도 편지 미기회 방 적시 계획 적는 거야.
And then there would also be cases where the impelling or projecting action would be non-virtuous, and the completing action, so filling in the picture, would be virtuous.
난 편지경 계획방 적지경 계획 적어야 될래도 보신데 맨다지 시시고.
And then there will be cases in which both the projecting and completing actions, karmas, would be virtuous, and those would be the opposite, would be non-virtuous. Four types.
당연 래 다시 망해배 대 임베 세브란 정도 와 간다지 제신 싹을래 제라 마사과 사라 마제바 해드리셔.
Then with respect to actions also there is division into, was it three?
그게 시소지래는데 제사 니가 임바 니가 뭐 임바 아니야 제 레진인데
Those that are done and accumulated according to intention, those that in which that aren't done but are accumulated according to intention, those that are done and are accumulated according to intention, and and those that are neither done nor accumulated in accordance with intention.
다 남중 가서 영자변 통대하길래 지금 드리지 시그래 가서는 삼박갈라 저와 갈와 삼박 나라 저와 갈와 다 삼박 갈라 저와 나과 다 삼박도 저와 드리 양식으로
Thus also, with respect to actions that we're certainly familiar with, there will be those in which the thought is wholesome, but the execution, the carrying out of the action, is unwholesome. Those in which the thought would be unwholesome, but the carrying out of it would look to be wholesome. And those that in which both the thought and the execution of it would be unwholesome, those in which the thought and execution would both be wholesome.
다야래야 심지어 투문 그 사셔베다 지퉁 그 레사 직 근데그 토는 드부냐 직 드부 가서 롱주야 직당 다야 심지어 individual 투문모임 배야 레게 제부디에 소수 라랑 투문모임 배터는 롱자야 인디비주얼 레 일단 직도.
Then there are actions or karmas in which the effects are experienced in common by a number of beings, and then actions, the effects of which are experienced only by one individual.
자, less as little bit another answer to the less out says.
So then if one asks, what is the mode of accumulating in an action, a karma?
Now, for example, I think you see just this moment with a certain motivation, with that there is a certain physical action as well as verbal action. This comes. You see, now you see good motivation, and with that some you see nice words and physical action, very gentle sort of action. This accumulate, let's say, good karma, isn't it? As a result of that action, now is the immediate result. I mean, we can feel it, and immediately it creates peaceful atmosphere, peaceful, friendly atmosphere. The other side, also with let's say anger or something like that, and expression, you see, very, you see, let's say, rude words, and some, you see, bad action like that. Immediately it creates, you see, unpleasant atmosphere. As soon as, now that is you see, the two stages now. Thome maribe kunela. Maribe kunelange, ta duji glass ha hota dale so.
So now we've gone through two of the stages.
No. This is the just this moment, the first stage, ignorance, you see, happened. Then it produced the action. Clear? That moment, you see, my main use. I mean, that moment, the action itself. After you see, I mean, the moment the action will cease. That time, the continuation of consciousness is there. So on that time, that is pangchash lagi la shigwe ngor chini kada maungbe dewu yong tu yong edi ta tsawar di phaji ta ta ru slam na kada khadu tigi kasa number shebe kan ya ni la yita phasha shabres na maungbol dewu jiya ta nibe chabaji ta digan shabres ta tele ya ni sumba namshis la.
The action imprints a potency, a predisposition in the consciousness, and that consciousness that continues on carrying that potency up to the time of the fruition of that karma is called the third member consciousness.
So you see, this what is the moment's action, it creates immediate result, and then meantime, now you see that will remain one is the potential, one potential which brings in eventually either you see happy experience, pleasant experience, or you see pain experience will come, will bring. So now that is the way, the how to create action and how to action brings the result, like that. That in the namshiti, that sumba namshiti remuti namshiti to the this love.
The picture symbolizing the third, this branch, consciousness, is a monkey.
The page didn't know that. The Korean, the namshi chang chibur devada, the dambe chang chudu devada, chang gero devada, chang guru devas, the mangu shake.
Within Buddhism, there are different explanations of how many consciousnesses there are. There's one system that asserts only one, others that assert 6, another that asserts 8, and another that asserts 9.
That's what Shadiri, Namshi Tu Shayare.
Most of the Buddhist systems assert 6 types of consciousness.
That Namshi Chibu doing it, any Kangdona Buna is, 비우되게 기후만 그 예를 들면 나로 기후 진행 때는 뭐도 비우도 지금 다긴 어디 되는 신체니 나는 광해 원고 소설이야 남아시 지리스 그 미니 때 남전에 때 도도 지거를 했다. 다 디스토르스 맨도 아다 근데 소리 세제 근데 가다 주디기 가서 또 스튜디오 맞춰면 거 카툴만 되는 처음인 거 제대 가다 근데 제가 어떤 남시 천다는 지 맨도
The monkey here in this picture is depicted, it seems to be depicted as one that's jumping from the house. However, it has some association with the assertion of that system that sets forth only one consciousness. That the one consciousness, when it appears at the eye, seems to be eye consciousness, and appears at the perceiving from the ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and so forth, but it's only one consciousness. So the picture here must have some connection with that. In any case, a monkey is a very clever and active sort of animal.
number shabataya that the nyongro dire na you tigi you let tigi deguti tamadala yungu amarba that the basla ya part sugarba.
Now the problem is that between the action and the fructification of that action there is a good deal of time.
다 레치미사 그봐 되기어봐 남배 좀 삼을로 레치미사 되거봐.
However, all Buddhist systems assert that actions, karmas are not wasted.
So that didn't develop paradelaya 투가잖아 지고요.
Thus, between the cause and the effect, there has to be something that connects the two.
아주 자우시를 나라리야. 청아 먹고 싶어요, 아래. 전에 딱 간다이니 두주 먹고 싶어요, 아래. 다 약슈디 다 간다이 레스닥의 내거이네리 레부녀의 내거이네리 간다 강사직 샤디어 봐. 때네 딱상기 나삼지 윤주 예여로 봐. 윤디 땡네 바자 샤도야. 바자 구시 디간에 샤임이야. 근데 때네 딱상기 다 때네 딱상기 나삼기 바자 구시지 저 모두베 링텔라. 다 바자 구시 냠직다 가서 independent identity 니고 봐. 봐. 다 근데 샤인드잖아. 애니 근신 나버 샤바사로. 다 근데 샤임도 와. 다 이네 편조랑 룩 샤인드 있잖아. 룩 터시드 샤인드 다 나삼 디데는 바자 거인도 이렇게 뭐 봐.
Many different assertions are presented with regard to what connects the cause with the effect. However, in the prasangika system, or in any system, there is a person that exists from the time of the performance of that action through to the time of the effect of that action. And in the prasangika system, that dependently designated person is the basis of the infusion of that predisposition or potency by the action. Now, as long as a system is unable to present such a basis of infusion of predispositions, as in the prasangika system, as long as they're unable to posit just a dependently designated person, they have to find some independently existent basis of infusion of those potencies. Thus, in the mind-only system, they present an alaya vijnana, a mind basis of all, as the basis of infusion of these predispositions.
전에 다 들리기 다 남자들 텐주에 가서 땡기 바자 구시디 나잠디샤 봐. 내가 그 바자 구실이야. 단 넘버 쉐바 그도 되게 넘버 쉐바들라. 쉐기에서.
In the prasangika system, the everlasting or continual basis of infusion of these predispositions is the mere self, the mere I, the mere person. And a temporary basis of infusion of predispositions is the consciousness.
다 된대대 된대게 넘버 셔봤더라 가서 그게 바자 랜 가마타베 네거리야 그게 다 가서 바자 당국 90지다 그다음 바자 레 신이 다 바자가 뭐 줘서 그래 뒤네가 그 넘버 셔봐 봐 어다 뒤 뒤뒤 남시 있습니다.
So now there's the action. The action is done. Right after that action, there's a state of destructiveness or cessation of that action, and there's a consciousness that is infused with right at that moment with the predisposition of that action. That is called the cause consciousness.
What?
Consciousness at the causal time.
제니 근데 뒤뒤 남시디 바자 거에 내급디니 끼시기 나로 다 끼시기 나로 받달라 뒤뒤 남시샤 뒤뒤 끼시기 나로 받
then that consciousness from that moment right up to just before the moment of the birth state, of the conception state of the new lifetime, right up just before that is called the consciousness of the causal time or cause consciousness.
Now that 단 제부 간다지 풍부 다 땡지 살지부터가 땡지 살지부터기 가다 머리배 왕기 누지 레사는 누지 뒤다 펜신 누지 되기 판제 가다 껴와 주는 거 봐. 다 껴와 주변 내거기 남시들이야 제두기 남시 쓰기 하래. 땡제 때 닝섬 자원에 때 시범 민수 나라고 봤다. 다 디파슬라다 큐브스인서래.
Then the consciousness of the very next moment, that moment of the connection to the next lifetime, is called the effect consciousness. In terms of its duration, it lasts from that moment to the time of the fourth branch, name and form, which would then be extremely quick.
야, 다 남시는 시. 다 되네 시바 민수.
Then the fourth is name and form.
다들 민수 민신의 풍부 시부터다 풍부 시행 시부터다 속세니 다 소풍이체.
Now, in terms of name and form, name is the four mental aggregates of feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness, and form is the first aggregate of form.
다들 물리야 줄수부터 잘돼. 가시한 농김사야지 지금도.
In the picture here, it's depicted by people riding in a boat. In other pictures, it's depicted by beams that are leaning against each other.
너나야 농김디자요.
And in sutra, it's depicted by beams leaning against each other.
데 가소리. 너나야 샤바자스데 페이지 디인서래 가사. 군신남신 대별 루체네다. 민시 풍부 난게 아니 이기남시라. 텔레 로소 군신남을 셔버체. 아니 수체. 다 디디 가서 편수 찍찍을 땡이게 돼. 농김난 신신이게 돼. 디네거 돼.
This is indicated in connection with the mind-only system, Chittamatra system, in which there is a mental consciousness, an alaya vijnana, a mind basis of all, and this form. It's like three beams, or I guess a tripod, supporting each other. And the meaning, the symbolization of people being in a boat, I don't remember.
그래. 자도 샤이베. 가. 가져오자. 이 민수 그랬죠, 원. number 7. 남실 자는 지금 박사 기야 이 시작으로 안다 민수 잘 걸어. 네.今天老聊着下不上。王希了是，民宿可能是假的，除了假的还是假的，能不能进来进？可能是的。밀자. 뭐 그런 게 지불 주자. 주디 수급 풍불자. 다 주인은 미디 명시 풍불자. 아니, 다 반도 좀 해야 돼. 주디 다. 되던 데 맞어. 되잖아 데 맞어. 내가 소리. 대한테 껴 사고 좀 살아. 경험은 투용에 남버 10이 안 돼. 남식날 집을 봐도 안 돼. 민수 크도 민수구나 되고 봐. 아니. 다 되자. 얘도 슬.
So then the boat symbolizes form, and the people in the boat symbolize the mental aggregates.
다도 가. 하다.
Just the boat symbolizes form, and the people in the boat symbolize the mental aggregates.
Okay, I watched it. Still, I'm not very clear. 다 전에 간다. 민시풍부체 수풍들이야. 안다 디다 참디 디셔가래. 지산 기치 원부 고퇴야 줘 봐. 당연 내기 시샤래. 다 내기 시샤신다 샤인 거야래. 그 풍부 림신다 중요한 인도잖아. 기시 림신 중요한 인도잖아. 다 가서 멜멜보 난나보 다다보 고고 살는지 청주도 가서 가려 공부 되어 살래. 다 간다 디보도 샤래. 디보도리야 민수기 기시 샤래. 민수기자 민수기야나.
Then the question is, how long does name and form last in terms of these 12? It lasts as long as I'm not sure of the word, how to translate it, but anyway, as long as the fetus or embryo has not begun to develop the 5 organs or the 6 organs through sort of jelly-like state and having perhaps little bumps on it and so forth, various names that indicate progression of the development of the fetus or the embryo.
당연히 민수부도 샤샤군데.
So
대샤시.
let's leave it at name and form for now.
다 이제 돈도 주도 거래. 말해 돈도 주도 거래. 니차. 2:30. Next session. 진짜 저렇게 생각.
Class is over.
알레 호조한테 question it. 그래 저거. 돈도 약속다 말로 주셔.
Please write out, if you haven't done it already, write out your questions and give them now. Give them in now.